Racist, misogynist, and homophobic. That's what one of Hollywood's brightest stars was called until recently. His meteoric success was followed by a shocking fall, and 10 years later he was able to rehabilitate himself in an incredible way in the eyes of colleagues and fans. There's no more dramatic story of a villain who became a hero in Hollywood right now. At the same time, he earned 6 Oscar nominations, including in the Best Director category during his unexpected return to Olympus. Mel Gibson. He's an actor, director, producer, and screenwriter, the idol of millions and despised by thousands. His work is being discussed at the level of the Vatican and the British government. His faith causes some to doubt his mental health, others to go to great challenges. What sins does the youth of the famous actor conceal? Why did he want to film The Passion of the Christ so badly? What indicates that Gibson could have been slandered and framed? And is there a chance for the star to regain his former status? Hello everyone, Biographer is with you. Today we'll tell you about the small and big successes about Mel Gibson, his secrets and defeats. And also, let's try to understand the reason for where the famous actor ended up today. Let's go. As often happens, our childhood affects the rest of our lives. Our views, our choices, and our risks in the future. This is what happened to Mel Gibson in many ways. In fact, the famous actor was named a little differently. Mel Columcille Gerard Gibson was born on January 3, 1956. The actor received his name in honor of the saint who's the patron saint of Ardagh, his mother's homeland, and the second double name, Columcille, was given to him in honor of the Irish Saint Columba. He became the 6th child in a devout Catholic family. He had 10 siblings in total. Subsequently, Mel recalled his childhood with humor and positivity.
It was great. It's great. It's like growing up in a crowd. It's like being an extra.
Mel's father, Hutton Gibson, was a very religious man and did not want his sons to participate in the bloody Vietnam War, and therefore moved the family to Australia in the early 60s. There they settled in a small town in the state of New South Wales. At that time, the future actor was 12 years old. Already in Australia, Hutton and Anne Patricia had 5 younger children. The head of the family served as a conductor at the railway company. Mom, Anne Riley, was a housewife, devoting herself to a huge family. Upbringing in a traditional religious family was strict. At the same time, Anne always supported her children in their pursuits, especially Mel. This, along with the sense of responsibility instilled in him throughout his childhood, shaped the future star. Moving was not easy to the family. After emigration, the Gibsons began to have financial problems. Gibson Jr. was also worried about drastic changes, and adolescence also left its mark. Shy, he often became the target of ridicule, a pattern that persisted even after moving to his new home. To gain credibility, the young man began to solve problems with his fists. And also, for the first time, he got addicted to drinking, disappearing near school in a local bar. The dubious method worked. Gibson eventually stopped being teased and formed new friendships, many of which, according to him, have lasted to this day. The guy spent time in the billiard room, got acquainted with hippies, and felt wonderful away from worries. Mel was not interested in school much. He did not like to study, and then he would speak of himself as the most ordinary student. Somehow, graduating from high school, Mel was going to enter the university in Sydney, dreaming of becoming a journalist, but fate turned out differently. It's not known whether the young man would have enrolled in or gone downhill, but a close person intervened in the matter. Unexpectedly for himself, Mel's sister sent his documents to the Sydney National Institute of Dramatic Art. Perhaps she recognized his creative potential, as Mel had a passion for staging illusionist acts for family and friends since childhood.
I always got a lot of jollies from creating illusions. I would actually go to a great deal of trouble to perform a practical joke or to make it appear as if something that wasn't happening was. And I guess that sort of marries itself into performance at some stage because you have to pretend.
Everyone loves clowns, but no one likes to pay them. His father told Gibson Jr., well, the future star had to prove the opposite. When he entered college, the young man had no acting experience at all, and therefore he auditioned for luck. He'll remember how his sister gave him $5 and told him to try himself. Since then, the actor will be grateful to her for this chance all his life. Mel didn't really believe that something worthwhile would come out of this idea, but no matter how amazing it was, Gibson passed the entrance exam successfully. And even the rumpled appearance due to the fight the day before did not prevent him from impressing the admissions committee. But having got what he wanted, the young man went back to his old ways, getting involved with bad company. And it's likely that it would have ended badly if fate had not intervened again. Well, the actor himself believes that he had every chance to become great thanks to his unusual gift. Which one, you ask?
I could tell jokes and stories, and and make stories up and convince people of things that weren't true.
You were a liar.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
A great liar.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good liar.
Yeah.
I'm not as good a liar now as I was then.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, the lying thing is something you have to try and overcome, I guess.
In the early years of his career, Gibson combined stage acting and cameo film shoots. Soon after entering the theater, he made his stage debut in the production of Romeo and Juliet, and in 1977 he made his screen debut. The actor was cast in the Australian TV series The Sullivans, which allowed him to show himself. One day, he was passing by the bulletin board at the Institute and saw an advertisement for the recruitment of extras. The most important thing was to be able to stay on the surfboard. The actor was able to audition and achieve a role in his first feature film, and in 1977, he appeared in the Australian drama Summer City. The picture has little to boast about. It was the debut work of director Christopher Fraser, and judging by his short career, it was not the most successful. The most impressive parts are the beautiful beaches of Australia and the handsome young Gibson. The young man did not sit idly by. In parallel with the filming, Mel played the main roles in classical theatrical productions. For example, in the tragedy Oedipus and the historical drama Henry IV. Then he even managed to collaborate with Judy Davis and Geoffrey Rush. In addition, the future star supported himself with various odd jobs, such as working at a window manufacturing factory or in an orange juice production plant, where it was easy to get a job because, as Mel himself said, no one wanted to work there. Such activities morally killed Gibson. He felt like he was getting dumb from monotonous work, but it suddenly had a positive effect. The young man tried to study as best as he could, realizing what prospects were opening up before him. Acting began to inspire him. He felt that there was something so strong that it could take him out of his comfort zone.
Out of control. It was,
You liked the idea that something could shake you that badly?
yeah.
That was
Yeah,
kind of-
oh, it was great. Yeah.
Soon, the first breakthrough happened in the actor's life. In 1979, George Miller invited Gibson to his post-apocalyptic action movie Mad Max for the main role. The actor was lucky here too. He didn't audition on purpose, but just went along with his friend. Initially, it was agreed that Mel would act as his driver, dropping him off near the audition, and he didn't look right for the audition. The day before, he had a big fight in a bar with the rugby team. His face was bruised and badly swollen. With this look, the first impression failed. The actor was offered to return to the audition in a few weeks, offering a much more ambiguous role.
I looked like hell. Everything was all banged up. I looked like, and the girl at the desk said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just dropping him off." And she said, "Well, we need freaks in this movie."
And what can he do about it? Gibson agreed to the proposal, and the casting specialist took several photos of him in which, according to the star, he looked like a, quote, broken grapefruit. When he returned 3 weeks later, he was not only not recognized, but also offered a key role. Mel had little understanding of what awaited him in the future, as he had primarily theatrical training. It was an amazing adventure. He will say later. And of course, he couldn't have known what it would lead to. The budget of the Australian film was limited. The director tried to get the maximum out of a small financing of 380,000 Australian dollars. Therefore, during filming, decommissioned police cars were used, which were used both for their intended purpose and repainted for other scenes. They also saved money on leather, so only the main character had a leather jacket. In addition, for the opening chase scene, the director sacrificed his own van. Since Mel was still unknown at the time, his name didn't stand out, neither in the promo nor during marketing. The emphasis was on action, and it worked out. The role of policeman Max, who after the Third World War protects the surviving Earthlings from gangs of scum, became a star for Gibson. The picture told more about the formation of the hero, as we'll know him in the following parts, about his transformation into the very Mad Max, his deep trauma and experiences. As a result, it was more of a drama than an action film, and of course, there were those who years later criticized the movie for its dramatic focus, the tension of the plots and scenes, the dialogues, and the improbability of it all. But no matter how criticized, Miller's work has become iconic over the years, and Mad Max had a sequel and became iconic for several generations.
You and me, Max. We're gonna give them back to heroes.
Do you really expect me to go for that crap?
The film paid off with a vengeance, coming just shy of making $1 million at the box office. Mel Gibson's star shone brightly for the first time around the world. In addition, he received an impressive sum for his work at that time. $15,000. 2 years later, the second part was released, Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior, and the actor's salary increased 10 times. The actor did not forget about the theater, being a member of the State Theatre Company of South Australia in Adelaide. Among his roles were Estragon in the play Waiting for Godot, Biff Loman in Death of a Salesman in 1982, etc., etc. There were several other, more intimate roles between the box office projects. In the same 1979, the world saw Mel in the image of a man with intellectual disability in the melodrama Tim. A touching story tells about the unrequited love between a kind, mentally defective man and a woman much older than him. Their relationship, which originated by chance, faces public condemnation and gossip. And can it be that a happy ending will come out of this? The film was created based on the novel of the same name by Colleen McCullough, better known for the book The Thornbirds. Tim has received many rave reviews. The picture changed part of the story, especially regarding the background of the other main character, Mary. Unlike the script, she's never been married, grew up in an orphanage, and did not know love. This was the first stumbling block, which eventually provoked a negative critical response. Another disadvantage was the superficial presentation of the plot of the original, the omission of important plot moves, the disclosure of the formation of the main characters, and the emergence of love between them. But even with this, the actor was able to show himself as a diverse, deep specialist. The film paid off in the box office and became popular in Australia, bringing Mel the love of the audience as well as the award for Best Actor at the 21st Australian Film Institute Awards. William Thomas of Empire gave Tim 4 stars out of 5, praising Gibson's acting, stating that Gibson sensitively portrays Tim without resorting to the usual facial tics associated with this type of role, and even when a romance begins to develop between the pair, the film rarely slides into cliché. The actor also appeared in the Australian educational short film The Hero, which showed the casting of actors for roles and how they work on creating episodes of a TV show. Soon, Mel was noticed by another Australian director, Peter Weir, who invited a talented performer to his war drama, Gallipoli. Gibson and Mark Lee played the roles of two friends who, inspired by military romance, enter the service, not assuming that fate will bring them into one of the bloodiest battles of the First World War, the Battle of Gallipoli. Their personal qualities are a love of running. They'll be able to protect friends from death for a while in the role of cannon fodder, but as in many similar stories, there's no need to wait for a happy ending here.
When are they going? Right about now.
Weir spent a long time looking for a budget for the film adaptation of his idea. The idea to make a film about one of the bloodiest and most mysterious battles of that time came to him while visiting the place where all this was happening. The film was the last in the Australian period of the director's work, and it also made him a legend in his homeland. Perhaps the key was that Weir did not do large-scale battles in global scenes. His battle is a massive tragedy that the viewer encounters through the prism of the lives of two friends, Archie and Frank. Here, the personal line prevails over the military one, and Gibson's hero is an ambiguous character with a dark past who must overcome his own personal crises throughout history. Gallipoli, under the director's skillful touch, emerges as a poignant anti-war drama. It recounts the sacrifices made by the Entente dominions in the ambitious quest to capture Istanbul, in particular, the young men of Australia and New Zealand. Driven by personal dreams, they tragically became expendable tools in the service of others' ambitions. The actor managed to showcase his talent admirably in the drama. When asked what helps him portray despair and pain so reliably, he replied,
"Well, we all have our own personal grab bag of that we carry around with us, don't we? Gee, I do."
The film earned many nominations at home, paid off in the box office, and made fame not only for Weir, but also for Gibson, bringing both to a new level of professionalism. In addition to the widescreen, the actor also showed himself on television, starring in a supporting role in the Australian show Punishment. A year later, the actor shared the lead role with the beautiful Sigourney Weaver in the historical drama The Year of Living Dangerously. And again, it was in collaboration with Peter Weir. This time, Mel plays an Australian reporter, Guy Hamilton, who arrives in Indonesia to expose corruption schemes in the government, to talk about inequality, chaos, and injustice of the Indonesian government against its own people. Having an already difficult political task, the main character starts an affair with an attaché of the British government, played by Weaver. Their affair makes his job more difficult, and being in an unstable country is becoming more dangerous every day. Interestingly, Gibson's character is a rebellious and self-confident reporter whose only weakness is love. The actor will return to such an image more than once, and the role of a loose, desperate but kind soul will hover next to the star for a long time. It's not surprising that such a topic was received in Indonesia without enthusiasm. Filming in the country was banned, and therefore they had to be moved from Jakarta, where the main work was planned to be carried out, to the Philippines, in the vicinity of Manila. And then, even more, Mel Gibson and Peter Weir were threatened due to the fact that the picture was allegedly planned to carry an anti-Islamic context. Subsequently, the team had to finish work on the film in Sydney. All this greatly increased the budget of the picture, and as a result, it failed at the box office. It may also have been influenced by the fact that the film was banned from viewing in Indonesia itself because of the too explicit showing of the rise to power of dictator Suharto. Another military work of this year was Tim Burstall's historical drama Attack Force Z. Here, the actor was again waiting for the main role, the captain of a special detachment whose mission is to land in China and search for the missing plane. The actor's youth was in the hands of the director here, since the emphasis was not so much on the military battles themselves as on growing up and rethinking the values of the main characters. The scenario is based on real events. Back in 1945, Operation Opossum was carried out, during which the commandos rescued the local sultan from Japanese captivity. In addition, the screenwriter used the book The Night the Z-Men Landed, written by Gene Janes, as a result of which the company had problems with the copyright of the story. Constant rains and script alterations, as well as personnel reshuffling, added worries. The original director, Philip Noyce, was fired due to the conflict and replaced by Tim Burstall. The concept began to be reworked at the last moment. Subsequently, Burstall will say that, but it's always awful when you take over from somebody else. And Phil's a friend, but he really wanted to do something quite different, and I was regarded as much more of a whore, I suppose. The film itself received average and mixed reviews, and Mel considered participating in the project one of his worst choices, calling the film pretty woeful. It's so bad, it's funny. It is natural that Hollywood saw a bright and talented actor. He was noticed largely thanks to the Mad Max franchise, but his early works were able to take their rightful place in the first period of the artist's work. In 1984, 3 of Mel's works were released all at once. The first, Roger Donaldson's The Bounty, introduced Gibson to Anthony Hopkins, Laurence Olivier, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Liam Neeson. It was Mel's first project of this scale, also starring. The melodrama was based on the story of a real mutiny on the ship of the same name. The mutiny was caused by a conflict between Captain Bligh and his best friend, young officer Christian Fletcher. The reason for the conflict was different interests. Christian and part of the team wanted to stay on a tropical island where the ship drifted by chance. The captain, relying on harsh measures against the team, demanded to return home and complete the mission. The screenplay was also based on Richard Ho's novel Captain Bligh and Mr. Christian. Later, the film will be called Factually Reliable, accurately describing those events, albeit with several differences. Despite the fact that initially The Bounty was considered a very promising project, production problems and a delay of work for 3 years affected the result. David Lean, the first director of the project, would later say, and the sad part is, it was the best script I've ever had. It was really a cracker. It would have made a marvelous film. But after all that work, they pulled the rug from under me. Despite the long work, the script was eventually completed only a day before filming. When Donaldson was invited to the role of director, he was very doubtful about his choice. Making the movie was something that initially I wasn't sure I wanted to do, he admitted. I thought it might be perceived as some sort of a remake, but I looked at it and decided I'd do it as long as I could do something completely on my own. Not a remake at all, but based much more on fact, something to set the record straight. Gibson also came to the project interested in the idea, but the process of working on the project disappointed him. This is largely due to the difficult filming conditions, constant rains of New Zealand, constantly swinging model of a real ship. The whole crew suffered from seasickness, but the actor himself added adventures. There was a carousing, the first fame, and the first big money. All this led to alcohol addiction, and it complicated the actor's already difficult character and love of adventure. I went mad. They would hold their breath at night when I went off. One night I had a fight in a bar, and the next day I had to shoot only one side of my face because the other was so messed up. If you see the film, you can see the swelling in certain scenes. The problem was already so serious that even Anthony Hopkins tried to reason with a young colleague. Mel is a wonderful, wonderful fellow with a marvelous future. He's already something of a superstar, but he's in danger of blowing it unless he takes hold of himself, he said. Gibson did not contradict these remarks, but was not ready to change anything. And what about the picture? It failed at the box office, despite generally good reviews. Critics praised the film's radicalism and historical accuracy. Even the famous Roger Ebert gave the film 4 stars out of 4, stating, "This Bounty is not only a wonderful movie, high-spirited and intelligent, but something of a production triumph as well." But there were also those who did not share this delight. Gibson's game, which was called insipid, also came under criticism.
Be no killing. We sent him adrift.
The next project was no less controversial. The story about the love of a prisoner and the warden's wife did not catch the audience too much. Gillian Armstrong was just starting to shoot projects about independent women, and therefore the film Mrs. Sophel turned out to be raw, not fully revealed in the motives of the main characters. It was also criticized for being overly sentimental and too focused on the main character. And yet it is much more than pleasant to look at the young and romantic Gibson. Mark Rydell's The River worked better. The plot tells about farmers Tom and May Garvey, who are fighting with local authorities against flooding the valley and building a hydroelectric power plant on their land. At first glance, the story may not seem particularly remarkable, and yet it avoids excessive sentimentality. The director masterfully created a realistic social drama that captures not only the shared struggles of Americans of that era, the fight for their land against the wealthy, but also delves deeply into the personal experiences of ordinary workers. It touched upon the issues of humanity and those facets that everyone is capable of going to. The River has been called one of Mel Gibson's best works in the 80s. The film received 5 Oscar nominations and 2 Golden Globe nominations, winning the Special Achievement Award category. The actor's career continued to gain momentum, and perhaps he would fit perfectly into the category of rom-com and drama stars, but the next picture will make him the steepest career turn. In the meantime, Mel buys a small farm and tries to cope with the first fallen glory. It seemed to him that this was something serious and real.
I think I need to work hard, and so I kind of dropped out and bought a cattle ranch, and then I kind of worked it for a while and learned how to work it and did all that. And it's backbreaking, it's never ending, and after about 2 years I said, I need to go back to the other job.
Since then, the actor has remained fond of growing organic vegetables and farming, but the actor's soul asked for more. If you say you haven't seen the reckless Mel Gibson running around with his bare torso and constantly annoying Danny Glover's character, we won't believe you. Desperate, excessive, brave, and reckless Martin Riggs. This role will be significant for the actor and will give him a new round of fame. The unusual pair of policemen quickly won the hearts of the audience. Screenwriter Shane Black was able to skillfully combine an action thriller with black humor. Despite the fact that it took him only 6 weeks to write the script, the screenwriter himself was sure that his work was terrible. So much so that he even sent the first copy to the trash. Fortunately, he changed his mind, because as a result, the author received a lot of money for his work, $400,000. At the heart of Riggs, Shane took the already familiar image of Dirty Harry. That's what I was thinking about for that character. Sort of the Frankenstein who everybody reviles. For what he did, for what he's capable of, for the things he still believes in. Because we think that we're all placid and tame, but in fact, violence intrudes in a horrible way, and then they have to knock on Frankenstein's cage and say, well, we kind of need what you do even though we hate and revile you. Please come out and kill these people for us. And it's the old gunslinger. Richard Donner picked up on the screenwriter's desire to shoot a kind of urban western, and therefore greatly mitigated the violence in the frame. This provided access to the picture and great popularity among the young audience, as well as removed the disgust factor in the murder scenes. Sure, there were a lot of deaths, but they died like they died in westerns. They were shot with bullets, they weren't dismembered. I like action and a strong storyline. I like to turn my head away in suspense, not in disgust. I think the audiences feel like I do, and that's why people like the film and come back to see it a second time, the director said. Chemistry immediately developed between Gibson and Glover. They were able to transfer it to the screen. Mel Gibson himself argued his interest in the picture by saying that Lethal Weapon was one of the few action films of that time that would not show the main characters in 3 dimensions. Riggs and Murtaugh were real characters, he said in a 2012 interview. Donner agreed. You don't find chemistry in real life very often, much less on the screen.
I got sent every action script imaginable. The guys were all fairly two-dimensional, and I found that the guy in the Lethal script was not two-dimensional. He had kind of something else going on. In fact, he was almost having a nervous breakdown.
Later, the main characters became very close friends in real life. It parallels the police relationship. Gibson said of his relationship with Glover, quote, "A lot of those guys become friends or become dependent on each other. They get a bond through desperation. Because we used to go out on night patrols, you get this feeling of vulnerability. It's the same with the film. It's kind of a feeling of desperation in a way. It's scary when you embark on something like that because you're exposing yourself in a way, so a bond forms. And he's a good actor and a nice guy, so it normally happened. It was easy. Working on the film was fun. The actor describes the shooting as pure fun, and the director admitted that there was often uncontrollable laughter on the set. It's not surprising considering how many funny moments there were in the film.
Remarks like that will not get you invited to Christmas dinner.
My luck's changing for the better every day.
But there was also serious work. To prepare for their role, the main actors were trained in 3 types of martial arts: capoeira, jailhouse rock, a fighting technique that originated in U.S. prisons, and jiu-jitsu. The work was very stressful. The actor recalled how often he later had to go to a chiropractor.
Yeah, you get skinned, elbows and bruised knees and the odd cut or sprain.
And during the filming, he had to run out of real exploding buildings. This, for example, was the City Hall of Orlando, which was going to be demolished. The local authorities did not come up with anything better than to contact the producers of the film and themselves offer to use the mayor's office for the building that needs to be blown up. Therefore, everything in the frame was more than natural. "We were jumpy as hell," Gibson admitted. "We knew the building was coming down and we were ready to sprint. When we took off, I thought, I'd better slow down for Glover, but he actually ran right past me." However, it was in one of the following parts, but you already know that Lethal Weapon had 3 sequels. The film, which earned more than $120 million at the box office with a budget of $15 million, was doomed to continue. The film spawned a franchise of 4 films and grossed almost $1 billion in total box office worldwide, but they might not have been. According to the original script, Riggs was supposed to die at the end of the second part. As Gibson himself admitted, the picture has always teetered on the verge of throwing the main character out of the story, and it almost came true in the first sequel. As Black recalls, working on this script was one of the most difficult, and therefore, as a result of his story, the hero had to die. It's clear that the project managers did not like it, and therefore it was necessary to rewrite everything. The screenwriter himself remained of his opinion. "There's no question the draft of Lethal Weapon 2 that I wrote, death and all, is my best work." These were not the first changes in the work, so the beginning and the end of the first part were also different. Lethal Weapon began with the main character running around naked and getting drunk in a trailer by the sea. In the original version, he also got drunk, but with dockers. But then he made mincemeat out of his own drinking buddies for bullying the dog. The ending, which the audience loved, should also have been different. In the original, Riggs and Murtaugh say goodbye to each other, and Riggs tells Murtaugh not to leave the police force because he's too old. The released film, as you remember, ends with the scene at Christmas. There were several other cutscenes. A scene in which Riggs attacks a sniper shooting in a playground, and a scene in which Riggs pays a prostitute to watch TV with him. Anyway, the result was a legendary film, one of the standards of the buddy cop movie. And as for Gibson, it's not hard to guess that for him such a role has become a ticket to the big leagues, and soon they'll begin to offer him very similar roles and images in order to repeat such success. What's your favorite part of the franchise? Write your opinion in the comments. There was another side to fame. The young, hot-headed actor often participated in fights and drinking parties. This created difficulties for him, since not everyone wanted to work with Daredevil. As Mel himself later said in an interview, the period of his youth was a kind of madness. It was difficult for him to cope with what fell on him at an early age. He didn't know who to trust.
I like to refer to it as imbalance. I probably should have been carted off by the guys in the white coats, but fortunately I wasn't. I don't like those places.
A young bloke.
Yeah. But that's no way to live your life, because the only one getting hurt by that is yourself,
Already in 1988, Mel was offered the main role in the thriller Tequila Sunrise by Robert Downey, where Kurt Russell and Michelle Pfeiffer worked with him. Here, on purpose or not, he copies his heroic image from Donner's films, although his hero's on the other side of the barricades. He's an honest, former drug dealer, the father of a family who's trying to get rid of the past. Only the past does not want to get rid of him. Against the background of constant calls from former colleagues, a close friend of the hero and a cop concurrently tries to dig up dirt on his friend, torn between personal and professional. Everything is aggravated by a beautiful woman who finds herself between the two main characters. Robert Downey made a movie with a very predictable plot, measured and calm pace. Such a combination of thriller and noir with a touch of melodrama became a good ticket for Downey's debut. And for Gibson, another movie in the piggy bank with a good rating and average reviews. Between the hero pictures, Mel also appeared in The Simpsons in the role of himself.
Well, I'm not licked. And I'm gonna stay right here and fight for this lost cause. Somebody will listen to me. Somebody will.
In 1990, the audience saw Gibson in 3 bold images at once. The story of 2 adventurous partners who are looking for an easy way to make money in the context of the Vietnam War has replenished the piggy bank of comedies in the actor's career. His hero is a desperate pilot, cynical but with a big heart. He meets his complete opposite. This opposite, a naive idealist but adventurous, is played by Robert Downey Jr. Interestingly, the future star of Iron Man at the time of the film's release was an aspiring star with great promise. Mel, on the other hand, had an impressive stock of experience and weight in the field, and therefore they say Downey Jr. agreed to the role only because he wanted to work with his more famous colleague at the time. Director Roger Spottiswoode tried to make a light comedy out of the war story. The main idea of the film Air America is the phrase, "If you can't laugh at the war, then what's the point of it at all?" And therefore the film is full of funny moments and desperate misadventures of the characters, simultaneously asking the viewer serious questions. As a result, the movie received mixed reviews. For some, the plot seemed too primitive, the theme was revealed unoriginally, and someone was delighted with the light and carefree film. On aggregator sites, it has an average rating of 3.3 out of 10. Critics were categorical and expressed extreme dissatisfaction with the movie. The film review in the New York Times by Karen James saw the film as a flawed star vehicle. This muddled film about a secret CIA project in Laos in 1969 fails on every possible level. As action film, as buddy film, as scenic travelogue, and even, sad to say, as a way to flaunt Mel Gibson's appeal. She wrote, film historian Alan Evans, in Brassey's Guide to War Films, in his commentary, was brief but pointed in characterizing Air America as a, quote, tawdry, unfunny war comedy. After the release of the picture, it was embroiled in a scandal due to the mention of American intelligence agencies in a compromising light. It was even withdrawn from German cinemas. John Badham's adventure comedy Bird on a Wire was better received. There's also a theme of special services, secret agents and operations, as well as the trade in prohibited substances. But this time, Mel's character is a good guy who got into bad circumstances. Having given evidence against a werewolf policeman, he's made to hide under the cover of the FBI. But only a chance meeting with an ex-girlfriend turns into mortal danger for the two of them.
Come on, follow me.
I gotta know what's going on.
Yeah, well, so do I.
Gibson didn't really want to take on the project. They persuaded him by offering to live near the filming location at the producer's house while working. This way, Mel could bring his family, and after work he could relax with them more. The picture turned out to be not too complicated. A bit banal, but charming melodramatic action movie from the past where we have chases, shootouts, love, and humor. She, Goldie Hawn, is a stereotypical blonde and a real woman. He, Gibson, is in the image of a classic prince on a white horse. Gibson's character turned out to be typical of the 1990s. A regular guy with a sense of humor who can fix a car and punch a corrupt FBI agent in the face. And it seems like Badham is not making a movie that you expect a lot from. But with its sincerity and simplicity, it won over the audience. Critics were less friendly to the film. A review in Variety called it an overproduced, tedious road movie. Owen Gleiberman gave the film a D grade in Entertainment Weekly, where he wrote that, quote, even in an era of paint-by-numbers movie making, director John Badham has pulled off a feat. He has made a film that's 100% generic. It should have been called romantic action comedy. But still, as a result, Bird on a Wire earned $70 million with a budget of $20 million. Perhaps the chemistry between the actors influenced the box office. Perhaps it was by the fact that Mel persuaded his partner to do most of the tricks on her own. The latest project is much less eccentric. Franco Zeffirelli was so impressed by Mel's performance in Lethal Weapon, namely the one where he tries to voluntarily pass away, that he offers him the role of Hamlet. It's quite unusual to see an actor in a Shakespearean project against the background of his films of that time. Despite the fact that the director was already a fairly respected maestro at that time with 2 Oscar nominations under his belt, no studio undertook to finance the reinterpretation of the famous story. That's why Mel decides to set up his own production studio, Icon Productions, to ensure the existence of the film. In addition, Mel felt at this point that he wanted to be a part of the world of the film industry not only as an actor.
It was an idea to just kind of be a part of the whole thing, you know. I wanted to understand the process because from the very first time that I was sitting around film sets, I'd stay around the hub and ask people questions. You know, I'd ask the cameraman what he was doing. I'd ask the lighting guy what he did. I just was like, you know, I was probably annoying to them, but I wasn't the kind of guy that vanished into the trailer. I used to hang around and try and figure out what they were doing.
When watching the play, you understand why Zeffirelli chose Gibson for the role of the prince. Having once shown how much he can transform into a madman, the actor completely dissolved into his character. He doesn't play a grief-stricken Hamlet, he becomes one. And the prince in his performance is not trying to look crazy, but on the contrary, as if he's trying to reduce his insanity. Expression, bulging eyes, obsession on the face, greasy clothes. It's not surprising that the production received many positive reviews. Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4, calling Mel Gibson's performance as the Prince of Denmark a, quote, strong, smart performance. Karen James of the New York Times praised Zeffirelli's naturalistic, emotionally charged direction, and also praised Gibson's intuitive acting, calling it strong, smart, and safe for ridicule. Such a push was the first step to rethink his career prospects, but more on that later. After a short break, the actor returns to filming the movie which will mark Mel's gradual transition to deep, dramatic roles. Forever Young is a rather unusual genre film, breaking out from the galaxy of action-packed films in which the actor was involved. He's still the same regular guy, but without the ironic smile and sparkle in his eyes. His hero, a reckless test pilot in love at the beginning of the 20th century, suddenly decides on an amazing experiment. He agrees to cryogenic freezing for a year, unable to watch his beloved die. But because of the outbreak of war, they forget about him, and he accidentally turns out to be unfrozen after many decades. Forever Young is considered to reveal a new facet of the actor's talent. The actor's colleagues on the set, Jamie Lee Curtis and such a young Elijah Wood, also revealed themselves to the fullest. Steve Miner's film received a lot of positive reviews and earned $127 million with a budget of $20 million. It wasn't a bad result. Encouraged, Gibson sets about his first project. Mel Gibson's touching directorial debut is a description of the film that can be found quite often. The film turned out to be really touching. An outcast teacher and a difficult teenager. What can unite them? The story was based on the novel of the same name by Swiss writer Isabel Holland, The Man Without a Face, which was warmly received by critics. It seemed unusual that Gibson decided to sit in the director's chair not of an action movie but of a drama, but perhaps it was the lack of serious cinema that prompted him to do this. The actor himself would later say that such a role change scared him very much.
Well, it was terrifying because every time you sort of venture into and you step up to the plate, there's a lot of trepidation. But that's okay. I mean, what's the worst thing you can do? Fail, right? And maybe it did fail. I have no idea. I don't think financially it did. But I went in easy. It wasn't a huge budget. It was a little story. It was, just getting your feet wet. So I put a toe in the water with that. And I made a lot of mistakes. But at the end of the day, it came out. It was okay. And then it sort of got me ready to do something big,
Moreover, the actor did not initially plan to star in the main role. He had to take this step after all the actors to whom he offered the main role refused such an opportunity. Budget constraints also added fuel to the fire. As a result, Mel himself took on the role of a disfigured, reclusive hermit who finds a second chance in the person of a slightly retarded young man played by Nick Stahl. The film skillfully, and without excessive sentimentality, raises important questions. Is it worth worrying about the past? Can we draw conclusions about another person only by appearance? Is it true that kindred spirits cannot avoid meeting? Both heroes who are not accepted by society find friendship and support each other, and it is significant that Gibson decides to start his career as a director with such a touching movie. The psychological melodrama earned $37 million and received generally favorable reviews. Even Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars. He praised Gibson's performance, calling it a reminder of his versatility. Not many actors can fit comfortably both in Lethal Weapon and Hamlet 1990, and here he finds just the right note for McLeod. Not a caricature, not a softie, not pathetic, but fiercely sure of what is right and wrong. But more success awaits him as a director in the future. In the meantime, the actor is taking part in 2 projects. The short film The Chili Con Carne Club, which tells about a small war that broke out in one of the Mexican villages, and Richard Donner's new project, Maverick. After a super successful action movie, the director wanted to shoot something else, and he decided to try himself in the Western genre. Gibson, as one of Donner's favorite actors, got the main role, the charming swindler and gambler, Brett Maverick. The filming partner and the main antagonist of the hero was Jodie Foster in the role of the charming thief Annabelle. The main plot of the story is built about their confrontation for participating in winning the poker championship. But in addition to the main cast, the director used many stars of westerns and country music in the main and episodic roles, especially during the poker championship. One of them was James Garner, who played the role of Brett Maverick in the 1957 film. He became the final hero in the trio of the main cast, portraying a marshal with a double bottom. Well, the highlight of the film was the meeting of 2 bosom friends. The director invited Gibson's Lethal Weapon partner, Danny Glover, to play a cameo role of a bank robber. Mel and Danny brilliantly executed an Easter egg while adding a touch of humor to an already witty film.
Give me that.
The comedy with elements of a Western was loved by the audience and earned $183 million. Well, Gibson seemed to have a lot of fun, especially considering how serious and responsible the work ahead of him was. One of Mel's best works, both as a director and an actor, is considered to be a story about the brave Scottish rebel William Wallace and the struggle of the Scottish people for independence based on a real historical figure. The epic drama Braveheart has become a landmark in the career of an already successful Hollywood actor. Of course, little has come down to us from real historical data about the Scottish hero and leader of the 13th century as a symbol of resistance to English rule. The script was written by aspiring screenwriter Randall Wallace during a trip to his homeland. He was a Scot himself. Inspired by the legend of his namesake, Wallace tried to convey the events of those times as authentically and sincerely as possible. The screenwriter put his soul into it and fought for his work, and therefore told the director that either the film would be shot exactly according to the script or it would not be shot at all. Gibson himself was looking for something epic and profound at that time, and therefore gave the script the green light. In addition, Mel himself has Scottish roots, and therefore the director felt a personal connection with the topic, and Scottish history and culture were close to him.
If we join, we can win. If we win, well, then we'll have what none of us have ever had before. A country of our own.
In addition to Mel himself, Sophie Marceau, Patrick McGoohan, Angus McFadden, Brendan Gleeson, and others starred in the film. Would an Oscar have been awarded to just a historical film? Hardly. The creators have worked hard on the content, historical authenticity, the depth of the questions posed, while they also delved into the spectacularity and plausibility of the battle scenes. And what are the beauties of Scotland worth? You'll find 3 hours of kilts, drama, violent scenes on the battlefield, and thousands of actors involved. This was 3,500 people on set. 9 cameras and me on a 4-wheel motorcycle in costume with blue face makeup, whipping around, checking camera positions because I only had like 2 monitors, says Gibson. It was fun. Such a scale required considerable expenses of $70 million. To ensure his big idea, the director moved filming from Scotland to neighboring Ireland. There he was offered tax breaks, open battlegrounds, and a government deal to use 1,800 members of the Irish Defence Forces to increase the number of extras in the film. The troops played the role of both the Scottish rebels and the opposing British Army in an era when it was not yet possible to add crowds using computer graphics. They were playing both sides. One day they'd be dirty, filthy with bad wigs and kilts, and the next they'd be all tooled up with the armor and stuff, says Gibson. Quote, then we'd split them in half the battle. It was crazy. Despite Mel's attempts to adhere to historical accuracy, there were still discrepancies. So there was no bridge in the image of one of the most important battles, the Battle of Stirling Bridge, which was filmed on the Irish plain of the Curragh. The wearing of kilts and blue combat makeup, which appeared later in the Scots, did not correspond to reality. But Gibson treats such details calmly, claiming that he works in the film business and he, obscene word, is not a historian. For the sake of cinematography and entertainment, the realism of deaths was also depicted. At the time of the film's release, decapitation and murder using a stake impressed viewers. It's nothing compared to what you see on TV now with Game of Thrones, but back then it was graphic, says Gibson. I wanted really quick cuts, very staccato. I thought that's the way battle death is. It just comes out of the blue and hits you in the head. So I wanted it to be like a blunt instrument and kind of shocking. And if everything was more or less clear with killing people, then he had to tinker with horses without computer graphics. Special mechanical horses were created from metal skeletons filled with foam and covered with fur. They were mounted on special jacks and mechanisms that provided naturalistic movements. At their core, animals were big toys. It also allowed the fake horses to not only run epically onto the battlefield, but also dramatically fall on the heroes in close-up scenes. They were a little heavy, 150 pounds, but it was not a 2,000-pound horse, says Gibson. You throw one of these fake horses on a couple of stunt guys and it's like a wrestling match. It looks good. A horse falling on some guys looks nasty. The horses were so realistic that the director had to deal with the local animal welfare society. We had to show them some B-roll to convince them that I didn't hurt animals, says Gibson. I was kind of flattered by the fact they thought I had been. The conflict was also caused by the image of a gay man in the picture, which was later called a typical homophobic caricature. At the time of the film's release, the director was able to hush up the situation with Glad, but later it will become another drop of oil in the already raging fire. As for the film as a whole, the effort paid off. Braveheart was a success, both at the box office and with the audience, collecting $210 million, as well as winning an Oscar in 6 categories. Among them were Best Film and Best Director. The influence of the picture years later on the Scots and their struggle for independence, which is still going on, can be judged by this fact. In 2022, Conservative Member of Parliament Giles Watling, in his speech against Scotland's withdrawal from the Union, mentioned Braveheart and Mel Gibson as companions to division and a factor of discord. In addition, the actor diversified his filmography by voicing the main character John Smith in the cartoon Pocahontas. At the time of the 90s, Mel Gibson became an A-list actor, able to cope with any role and in any genre. He was known for his devout Catholicism and strong family. In addition, in 1985, the actor was proclaimed the sexiest man alive. It seemed that everything had been successful in his personal story, and nothing foreshadowed trouble. The actor's fans liked the image of the brave guy so much that he'll not leave it for a long time. So Mel's next works will receive quite high ratings and reviews. In 1996, Gibson fearlessly searches for his son's kidnapper in Ron Howard's thriller Ransom and wins a Golden Globe for his role in the Best Actor category. A year later, he plays a paranoid taxi driver obsessed with conspiracy theories in Richard Donner's Detectives Conspiracy Theory. His partner in filming and chasing from federal agencies and organizations was the beautiful Julia Roberts. In parallel, Mel appeared in a small role in Yvonne Reitman's comedy Father's Day. Despite the fact that the film can hardly be called successful, the actor had a great opportunity to work on the same set with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal. 2 years later, the brutal Mel Gibson plays just a bad guy in Brian Helgeland's action thriller Payback. Interestingly, the director himself noted that he needed a bad guy story without an invented excuse for his actions. And so it turned out Gibson's hero trashes cars, pursues his detractors, kidnaps and cheats, and does all this to get back his $70,000. No more, no less. As Roger Ebert later wrote about Mel, the actor plays a very serious role, doing it with a grin on his face. Gibson is essentially an action comedian who enters into violence with a bemused detachment. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Here, he has fun as the movie goes over the top, as when a doctor operates on him for gunshot wounds, using whiskey as a painkiller for the doctor, not Gibson. He wrote, "Even the manner of killing by the main character is shown with a bit of humor and satire. Therefore, the actor's fans knew where they were going, and the picture deservedly earned $161 million. At the same time, the actor made all the talk about himself, thanks to rather harsh and unusual remarks. In 1991, he came under fire for homophobic remarks in an interview with the Spanish newspaper El País, which included the phrases, "They take it up the ass. This is only for taking a shit." And when GLAAD demanded an apology, the actor told Playboy, "When hell freezes over," and sent them in a well-known direction. There were even more extravagant statements that already referred to Hollywood.
You can't get mad. You can't get mad. You can't let it get you, because you have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken that you are going to be fucked over at some point by people who you may have done something nice for.
In one of the interviews, the actor makes a shocking statement about the factory of stars and that he was shocked by how things are. Gibson begins by explaining how he had a strange, paranoid suspicions about Hollywood when he arrived. You go away and you think, no, I was wrong. That's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later down the track, you were exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. He shared. Gibson called some celebrities, including Chris Walken, antichrists. And to survive in Hollywood, according to the actor, you need cockroach resilience to survive in this town. There were such phrases.
There's a producer I know, successful producer, I will not mention names, but his whole opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief. He says, women on film, either naked or dead. Both is better.
Interestingly, Mel ended his interview with a warning. The star spoke in detail about what awaits betrayal in Hollywood and a knife in the back. This moment will become important, but years later. In 2000, the actor took up arms again. This time, he was on the side of the law and investigating a murder at a hotel for people with mental disorders in Wim Wenders' drama, The $1 Million Hotel. The movie was created based on the idea of Bono, a musician of the band U2, during the filming of the video Where the Streets Have No Name, which 13 years later was reinterpreted and adapted by screenwriter Nicholas Klein. Here, Mel in the title role walks around in a top and with a flat corset around his neck, trying to find the cause of death of the son of a rich tycoon. And it seemed like an interesting idea, but despite the participation of Gibson and Mila Jovovich, the picture failed noisily at the box office. Later, Mel himself would criticize his participation in the project, calling it boring as a dog's ass. Of course, he corrected himself later, apologizing to the director. I take back all my words. I actually said it very unsuccessfully because it was in Australia after almost 6,000 interviews. My plane was delayed and then someone asked this idiotic question. Being by nature an irritable and sometimes self-destructive person, I blurted it out, completely ignoring other people who worked hard and did a great job. But not one actor was unhappy with the picture. The reviews were also terrible. The film was called meaningless, lost, pretentious, and selfish. As a result, the film has established itself as one of the greatest failures of the 2000s. Roland Emmerich's historical drama, The Patriot, about the struggle of the United States for independence, became much more successful. As you probably guessed, the film takes place at the end of the 18th century and tells about those events through the prism of the family of Benjamin Martin, a veteran of the Anglo-French and Indian Wars, as well as his 7 children. By the way, initially, according to the script, the main character had 6 children, but Gibson demanded that another one be added to the story due to the fact that he himself had 7 of them. In addition to Mel, the main roles were shared by Heath Ledger, who played Martin's eldest son, and Jason Isaacs in the role of Colonel William Tavington and the main antagonist of the picture. Despite the fact that the picture is filled with a lot of violent scenes, and this was the main reason why Harrison Ford refused the main role, this did not prevent it from making good money at the box office and getting good reviews. There were also 3 Oscar nominations and a Saturn Award nomination. The truly successful work of the actor in the early 2000s was the comedy drama What Women Want, directed by Nancy Meyers, starring Gibson and Helen Hunt. If anyone has not watched or does not remember, the story tells about an advertising manager who, by coincidence, begins to hear the thoughts of women. This gives the Lovelace and careerist in the person of Gibson the opportunity not only to get what he wants from the female sex by cunning, but also to move a new boss, for whose position he's also long claimed. Only now fate gives him a chance to get better on the contrary and meet love. The film was a huge success at the box office. Perhaps after the actor's last works, fans were happy to see the Hollywood star in a comedic, funny, and relaxed role, with that playful twinkle in his eyes. There's another interesting point. In his role, Mel acts as the least politically correct guy in the universe, as well as a categorical and somewhat cavalier character. This partially echoes the interview of the actor of that time, and the scandal that will follow later. Was it an accident that the director chose Gibson for such a role? It's hard to say, but in any case, the efforts of the teams were justified. In addition to earning money, What Women Want received a number of nominations, including a Golden Globe in the category Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical Film for Mel Gibson. In 2002, 2 fairly successful films with his participation were released. Mel puts on his helmet again and takes up arms in Randall Wallace's war film We Were Soldiers, which received generally positive reviews from critics. And also, he fights aliens in the fantastic action movie Signs. There, his character, a former priest who lost faith in God after the accidental death of his wife, witnesses the invasion of alien creatures on Earth, as well as the appearance of mysterious circles in cornfields. The film is filled with invisible clues and signs, which the title hints at, and it's thanks to them that Gibson's hero can not only defeat the aliens, but also restore his faith in God. Gibson's role in the film was kind of a surprise, since the actor was not depicted on the poster at the request of the director of the film, M. Night Shyamalan. The horror movie starring Mel became one of the highest-grossing films of 2002, grossing $408 million. In addition, it received a lot of positive reviews from critics, including the atmosphere, cinematography, and music. There were also those who found holes in the plot, but where without them? At the same time, on aggregator sites, the picture received an average score of 7 out of 10, and the critical consensus read, "With Signs, Shyamalan proves once again an expert at building suspense and giving audiences the chills."
I cursed.
I heard.
Among the galaxy of successful works, Keith Gordon's comedy musical The Singing Detective stood out, in which Gibson again met Robert Downey Jr. on the set. The duo played the relationship between a doctor, played by Gibson, and a writer with mental disorders, Downey Jr.'s role, in which the former tries to pull his patient out of his hallucinogenic world. The movie received very poor reviews, despite the praise of Robert's game. It was rated rotten on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 3 out of 10. In 2004, Gibson shocked the public again with his next high-profile project. He returned to the screens with the drama The Passion of the Christ. Impressive in all respects, in which he acted both as a screenwriter, as a director, and as a producer. The story tells about the last day of Jesus preceding the crucifixion. For the actor himself, as for a very religious person, the work became primarily a work about faith, hope, love, and forgiveness in the life of mankind. According to the star, the idea of making a film about religion appeared 13 years before the start of work. Fed up with fame, money, and everything that came to him with fame, he fell into a personal crisis. The actor admitted that he was close to becoming seriously addicted, and he began to ask himself questions about the meaning of existence. In an interview, he will say that he was in a state of spiritual bankruptcy.
And when I was younger, I got my proboscis out and I dipped it into the font and sucked it up, all right? It didn't matter. There wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. It's not good enough. It leaves you empty. The more you eat, the emptier you get.
Then he continued. A couple years back, I was looking out a window, wondering why I shouldn't jump. Life had no meaning. It was boring, purposeless. That's when I turned to him. That's when my relationship with Christ really started growing. And then he said, I was a bad guy, a really horrible guy. My sins were the first to nail him to the cross. I wanted to tell his story. Despite such faith and the need for his project, Mel did not really believe in the success of his idea. He was ready for the death of his career, convinced that in modern society, to shoot a picture on a religious theme was initially a failed idea. But despite the fear and the fact that the project did not find support in Hollywood, Gibson decided to take a chance. They think I'm crazy, and that may be true, but maybe I'm a genius, Mel said about the barbs of his detractors. Having reached an impasse, Mel Gibson independently paid all the costs of the film, which amounted to $25 million. It was so important for him to show a story that changed his life and attitude to the world, and he sincerely hoped that the same thing would happen to the audience who watched the picture. The team tried and even overdid it. The conditions of Palestine of those times were recreated in detail. Aramaic, Hebrew, and Latin were spoken in the frame. Such meticulousness in the approach was due to the fact that the actor was disgusted by all previous attempts to tell the story of Jesus, which he had met earlier.
Well, it was something I was raised with, and it's a story that, one grows up with. And then as a kid, you watch all those 50s Bible epics, and they're always really cheesy. I mean, you never believed them. They sort of had bad wigs, stilted acting, cheesy accents, and it was like I sort of wanted to see one that was real and gritty, so I was just trying to fashion.
The movie was replete with harsh and violent scenes, which was extremely difficult for Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus. Later, he would say that he received real physical injuries on the set. Due to the layered makeup, his body was covered with blisters, which made him unable to sleep. He was really hit with a whip twice. He dislocated his shoulder, received bruises under his eyes, and was struck by lightning at the last stage of work on the film. Despite the fact that most of the work on the films took place in winter, the actor was dressed only in a lion's skin. Because of this, he was constantly freezing, so much so that he could barely speak. After shooting and completing the film, he was hospitalized. The actor underwent 2 heart surgeries and was prescribed a large amount of medication. At the same time, the artist declares that all the sufferings he went through were a blessing and helped him to further strengthen his faith. But Caviezel wasn't the only one hurt. Actress Rosalinda Celentano, who played the role of Satan, fainted several times, which caused filming to be suspended. Gibson will accept all these situations in his own way, saying later that the picture was hindered by evil forces.
See, I'm a believer, by the way. So if you believe that there are big realms of good and evil, and they're slugging it out.
What does the evil side want?
Oh, it wants you. It wants you. People are capable of horrors, of atrocities. We're also capable of wonderful things, of good things. And we have the choice. What do we choose,
To prepare the script, Gibson used 4 gospel narratives about the sufferings of Christ and a number of texts from the New Testament. But anyway, the project was founded and transmitted through the prism of the feelings of the director and his main actor. Caviezel would later say in an interview that participating in this film is his mission, and that, in his view, modern Christianity has become weak and useless. Therefore, their film was clearly aimed at stirring up modern society. Caviezel recalled that when they met, they both hesitated to embark on the path of creating such a project. According to him, Gibson warned that participating in the picture could completely change his life. If you do this movie, you may never work in this town again. I don't want to be responsible for that. The director allegedly told him then. Apparently anticipating the public's reaction to his brainchild, Mel turned out to be right. After working on the project, they both found themselves under siege. Caviezel claims that The Passion of the Christ influenced the way he was viewed in Hollywood, and the actor turned out to be an outcast for a long time. The actor, as a deep Catholic, accepted this as the price for bringing important things to the masses. We have to give up our names, our reputations, our lives to speak the truth, Caviezel said. Though he labeled Gibson a horrible sinner, he said the actor-turned-filmmaker should not be vilified. Mel Gibson doesn't need your judgment. He needs your prayers, Caviezel said. According to colleagues with whom Gibson worked, he was a brilliant professional in working with actors. Being an actor himself, he knew how and what exactly he had to show, what he had to ask his colleagues. So, Maya Morgenstern called Mel a wonderful actor and director who really cares about his colleagues. He asked us and pushed us to express ourselves, to create, she said. According to Morgenstern, Mel doesn't talk much on set. He moves more, visually depicting exactly what he expects from the actors in his film.
There's something in his presence as a human being, as a director, as the leader of the set, that people just gave it 110%.
I mean, the crew was amazing. They gave it 110%, really.
The Passion of the Christ made a splash and became a box office hit, earning $600 million. It attracted a huge number of religious viewers, but it also earned a lot of condemnation. However, the film also became a source of controversy, as some critics accused Gibson of anti-Semitism. Jamie Bernard of the New York Daily News called it the most virulently anti-Semitic film made since the German propaganda films of World War II. Another factor was the conflict between Gibson and Frank Rich. The latter fiercely criticized the director for his work, writing many critical articles about him. What's really happened since Passion of the Christ is that he was ahead of the curve. Anti-Semitism has come out of the closet. Part of the dark, hateful, vicious part of our culture is that he is in fashion, even if he's not in fashion in Hollywood, Rich says. Mel also did not remain in debt, saying that he wants to kill the writer and his dog, which he never had, saying, "I want his intestines on a stick." For this period of time, Mel appears as an actor only in Paul Abascal's picture Paparazzi, which Gibson's company produced. The story told about the life of the popular Hollywood star Beau Laramie after the accident, which was staged by the paparazzi, after which Beau goes to restore justice. It was one of the biggest setbacks of Gibson's career. The film failed at the box office, received a lot of outraged reviews from members of the press who called the film arrogant, rude, ridiculous, and with questionable morality. Who knows? Maybe the theme of the film was so acute that it generated too harsh a reaction. Another attempt by Gibson to direct is the historical thriller Apocalypto. It was no less vivid, impressive in comparison with Mel's previous works as a director, and no less bloody.
We had the sense that we were on a frontier of doing things that had not been done before.
Gibson co-wrote the script with Farhad Safinia, and the main filming took place in Mexico. Therefore, Mexican and local actors were taken on the main roles. The filming location was not chosen by chance. The story of the picture tells about the period of decline of the Maya civilization in the early 16th century against the background of the story of the survival of the young traveler Jaguar Paw after the devastation of their village by a group of human hunters. The director and screenwriter very skillfully plays with contrasts in the film. Against the background of personal tragedies of an entire nation that is desperately trying to survive in a changing world, an event occurs that will radically change their history and the power of which they do not even suspect. The idea of the apocalypto arose during the work on The Passion of the Christ. Safinia helped Gibson in the work on the previous picture, and even then they began to discuss the concept of the chase film, on the basis of which the backbone of the next project was built. Mel wanted to shake up the stagnant genre of action-adventure, where computer technology, ordinary stories, and small roles prevail, and create a chase similar to a car race where you only need to turn the switches. Considering different nationalities and passionate about ancient cultures, they eventually chose the Maya because of its scale and subsequent tragedy. The Mayas were far more interesting to us. You can choose a civilization that is bloodthirsty, or you can show the Maya civilization that was so sophisticated with an immense knowledge of medicine, science, archaeology, and engineering, but also be able to illuminate the brutal undercurrent and ritual savagery that they practiced. It was a far more interesting world to explore why and what happened to them. As usual, Gibson approached the issue of creating his picture with all seriousness and scale. He studied the available sacred text, studied the history of the nation, mythology, and legends. Striving for historical authenticity, the filmmakers invited Richard E. Hunson as a consultant. He's a Maya specialist, associate professor of archaeology at the University of Idaho, and head of the Mirador Basin Project to preserve a large area of the rainforest of Guatemala and the Mayan ruins that are located on its territory. Gibson said of Hanson's involvement, "Richard infected us with his enthusiasm. He managed to convince and reassure us that there was some authenticity in what we wrote, along with imagination." In order to convey the spirit of the time and immerse the viewer in the atmosphere of the film as much as possible, the director built dialogues entirely on the use of the Yucatecan language. I think when the audience hears different languages, they completely leave their own reality and immerse themselves in the world shown in the film. And more importantly, it also puts an emphasis on cinematic visuals, which are a kind of universal language of the heart. He explained his approach. He also adhered to his approach with regards to actors, inviting little-known or unknown actors from Mexico City and Yucatan or descendants of the indigenous peoples of Canada and the United States. For Gibson, it was especially important that the characters were not associated with previously played roles. In addition to the actors, some scenes required participation of more than 700 extras who were recruited from the local population.
That was beautiful.
So we chose Catemaco, the village that was near this piece of jungle, as our base for the next 5-6 months.
Each of these extras had a makeup artist, a costume designer, and a hairdresser. In order not to use computer graphics, models of real Maya pyramids were built, although they were a mixture of many local cultures and epochs. Mel had to try very hard to show the actors exactly how to use props and constructed models, how to climb, how to lower objects. He practiced it himself. It took a lot of time and effort. At its core, an entire Maya city of that era was built.
Real sets were the way to go, and the people there had a real sense that they were in a place. I mean, it was awesome to walk in there, even empty. You'd walk in there and you go, woo.
Well, Gibson likes scale, as well as entertainment. Gibson kept what worked out of passion, subtitles, brutality, feverish visuals, but now without a religious basis. The scenes of murder and sacrifice are really impressive. This later provoked criticism from historians and archaeologists who approached the picture for depicting the Maya as bloody lunatics. Representatives of the national minorities even filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, considering the picture discriminatory and denigrating the Mayan culture. But as for the cinematic part, the film received mostly positive reviews. In the Ebert and Roper TV show, Richard Roper and guest critic Aisha Tyler gave the film a 2 thumbs up rating. Michael Medvin gave the film 4 stars out of 4, calling the film an adrenaline-fueled chase movie. The picture received 3 Oscar nominations, a Golden Globe nomination, and a BAFTA in the Best Foreign Film Language Film category. By this point in his career, Mel Gibson was able to prove that he could not just make an Oscar-worthy film, he could make it on his own and without the support of Hollywood. His work was rejected by many studios, and at the same time they were able to earn very good money. Apocalypto became the crowning achievement of the actor and director's talents. He discovered a way to create and distribute films, and he didn't have to answer to anyone. Well, except for himself. Interestingly, some saw a connection between Gibson's second and third films, believing that Apocalypto is the director's reasoning on the topic of salvation by European Christian colonialism and its victory over the cruelty of Maya sacrifices. Gibson himself claimed that the film really touches on the theme of the decline of civilizations, but is more a reference to modern realities and a kind of warning about what can happen to us. There were also those who saw in his work a direct connection with the religious activities of the actor. Where did Mel Gibson's church come from? That personal and spiritual crisis, which he will talk about later, led him back to the Bible. Mel, as we wrote above, grew up in a very religious family. His father, Hutton Gibson, is famous for his statements and attacks on the Vatican and the book, Is the Pope Catholic? Both the son and the father believe that modern Christianity has weakened and lost its influence. Although Gibson Sr. was originally an atheist, the tragedy changed his understanding of religion. After a triple fracture of the spine, he dreamed of Mary, mother of Jesus, and the man got to his feet. After that, Hutton founded his own religious community and became a Sedevacantist Catholic with extremely conservative beliefs about Christianity. Gibson's church believes in the Latin Mass and the literal reading of the Bible. I go to an all pre-Vatican, the Second Latin Mass. He told USA Today in 2001, quote, "There was a lot of talk, particularly in the 60s, of wow, we've got to change with the times, but the creator instituted something very specific, and we can't just go change it." Gibson Sr. claimed that the Second Vatican Council was the result of a conspiracy between Jews and Freemasons to control the church, and that the Holocaust was just an invention of the Zionists. Sedevacantists are an ultra-conservative trend within Catholicism and believe that since the Second Vatican Council, there has been no legitimate pope at the head. Mel clearly followed in his father's footsteps and also professes Catholicism, although he denies belonging to the Sedevacantists. In 2007, the actor was recognized as the most influential Christian in Hollywood. He's been criticized more than once for refusing to condemn his father's reactionary views. Mel explained that his father is his father, and the fact that someone doesn't like his father's views is not his problem. In 2003, the actor became a patron of the construction of a church in California, Church of the Holy Family, with 70 followers. Tucked away in the wooded mountains of Agoura Hills, 30 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles, this rustic church, not affiliated with the Roman Catholic Archdiocese, has a foot-high crucifix on the altar, and the priest stands with his back to the parishioners, saying Mass every morning exclusively in Latin. In church, women should wear headdresses. But the actor inherited his parent not only in faith, he also got a provocative attitude from his parents towards the Jewish population, as well as towards the head of the Catholic clergy. This period of Mel's career can be considered very successful. High-profile roles have cemented his status as one of the most sought-after Hollywood stars. Moreover, the interests of the star are not limited only to filming. In 2005, the actor bought Mago Island from the Japanese Tokyo Corporation hotel chain for $15 million. The island is small. Its area is only 8.5 square miles, surrounded by white sands and reefs. By purchasing it, the actor promised to leave the nature of the island in its original form and kept his word. According to satellite images on the island, there is a modest actor's estate, an airstrip, and several scattered houses in its depths. The manor itself remained from the previous owner, and Mel did not particularly rebuild or redo anything. There are only about 40 local residents on the island. The actor does not come here often, and the exotic place serves as a vacation spot for him, his family, and friends. And who knows how his career would have gone if no less high-profile scandals had not started with the star.
I guess I must have been a little overwrought. So that's what happens. Too much pressure, too much work. You do things that go against good judgment.
6 months before the release of Apocalypto, a situation began that would later be regarded as the beginning of the fall of Mel Gibson's career. The dirty and public scandal of the actor's drunken arrest has greatly tarnished his reputation. During a stop for speeding, an open bottle of tequila was found in the cabin. And the problem wasn't just driving improperly. According to investigators, the actor initially tried to escape from the scene of the crime and began to be rude when trying to detain. During that situation, the actor, clearly not in a very adequate state, expressed a tirade with anti-Semitic comments. According to the officer's report, the star blamed Jews for all the wars in the world and also threatened the officer with reprisals for detention. His statement made headlines around the world, causing a storm of indignation. Gibson would say years later that it was the booze that clouded his mind. Later, according to a court order, the actor was required to attend meetings of the Alcoholics Anonymous Club every week for 7.5 months, as well as pay a fine of $1,300. He also volunteered to make a public announcement about the dangers of drunk driving and undergo rehabilitation. Interestingly, a few years before the incident, the actor gave an interview in which he admitted his mistakes in the past. It seemed that he had rethought his addiction and was ready to move on.
And that I look back at that now and I go, what was I thinking? I was a wild boy. And we grew up in the 60s and 70s and, wild times.
Just all kinds of carrying on.
What flaws shall I expose to the world here? Yeah, it's, done a lot of things I'm not proud of.
Despite the success of Mel's work as a director, his influence was undermined by the events in Malibu. After this incident, evidence of the actor's numerous offensive statements began to surface. Homophobic, racist, and sexist. These were leaks of recordings in which Gibson shouted racist statements as well as insulted his wife and the mother of his child, Oksana Grigorieva. There, the actor tells his wife that she deserved that he hit her and makes remarks about her appearance, such as, quote, "You look like a fucking bitch on heat, and if you get raped by a pack of N-words, it will be your fault." In the same 2011, Mel got a new role from director Jodie Foster. After that, there was the charge of committing a misdemeanor again. Grigorieva would later say that the actor also used physical violence against her. The actor began a relationship with Grigorieva sometime in the late 2000s. Before that, he was married for a long time to Robin Moore, with whom he had 7 children, 2 daughters, and 5 sons. It's not known how the couple lived or whether there was abuse and physical violence in their relationship. It is known that they met in 1977. At that time, Mel was still an unknown actor and Robin was a nurse. There was a time when their marriage was considered the most durable in Hollywood, by the standards of which 28 years is a lifetime. While the actor was moving towards his dream, Moore supported him, took care of the household, and raised numerous children. In a 2002 interview, Mel stated that there were times when he and his wife wanted to strangle each other. He said that marriage requires patience and discipline from each of the participants, but that it's worth it in the end. And later, he will call his wife a wonderful woman.
She's the best friend I have ever had. She's just great and would be there completely 100%, 110%, and to put up with me. That's already a tall order. So, hey, I'll spend the rest of my life giving her medals. More precious than jewels.
After 28 years of marriage, Moore filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. It probably was a Russian pianist, but there is information that the couple stopped living together back in 2006 after that very car accident. They just regulated financial and property issues among themselves for a long time. Gibson did not go into details, but mentioned that he was the culprit of the breakup. After the divorce, he gave his ex-wife about $400 million. In addition, the judge ordered the actor to pay his ex-wife half of his income for the rest of his life, which became one of the largest divorce payments in the history of Hollywood. But the affair with Oksana Grigorieva was much more public and scandalous. Only the lazy one didn't write about their relationship then. She officially began an affair immediately after Gibson's actual breakup with Moore in 2006, but evil tongues say that perhaps their relationship began much earlier, and they were introduced by a mutual friend whose name is shrouded in mystery. Love developed rapidly. Already in 2009, the pianist gave birth to the actor's daughter Lucia, and 5 months later, the couple broke up with a scandal. Photos of Oksana in bruises appeared on the network, as well as the very record on which Mel's insults towards his wife were heard. The woman appeared in front of the public with beatings and 2 broken teeth, and at the time of the beating, according to Grigorieva, she was holding an 8-month-old daughter in her arms. A series of courts began to decide who should keep the child. In addition, doctors found a concussion in Grigorieva, which was attributed to the work of the famous actor. The woman filed for an injunction accusing her husband of domestic violence. According to her, the conflict was more than once and often arose because of the actor's jealousy. In order to protect herself and her life, the pianist, according to her, went on a hidden recording. And Gibson accepted the court verdict without objection. But allegedly not because he was guilty, but because he wanted to hush up the hype faster and protect the family from the media madness that began at that time. The actor never agreed with the accusation against him, calling the record fake. During the court hearings, Mel claimed that the incident took place, but it was completely different. According to Gibson, the couple quarreled that day because Oksana behaved inappropriately towards the child. The pianist allegedly grabbed the child in an inadequate state and rocked her violently. In order to bring the woman to her senses, the actor slapped her in the heat of the moment. Mel insists, "I did not hit Oksana with my fist." As she assures you, "I didn't hit her in the face at all, then or ever. Yes, I didn't handle the situation properly, but I was worried about how hard and rude Oksana was rocking Lucia." The former lover was actively going through the interview. People magazine, with a circulation of about 4 million copies, published an interview with Grigorieva in which she introduced Gibson as a potential killer. The culmination of the scandal was the pianist's performance on The Larry King Show, where she described in detail the quarrel and their personal relationship, accusing the star of all sorts of sins. And perhaps everything would have been unambiguous if Oksana had not been considered in Hollywood circles a kind of gold digger and a hunter for a big purse. Interestingly, Grigorieva chose people for the interview who are rumored to pay substantial fees to their sources, and she refused to perform on The Oprah Show, which does not pay the guests of her show. Oprah also did not agree to a concession to Grigorieva's PR people and did not want to advertise her latest album. It's also known that Oksana was in huge debt, and her only income was the payment of alimony by the fathers of her children. The pianist had an eldest son from actor Timothy Dalton. Gibson's representatives claimed that the recordings were forged by the pianist for selfish purposes, but still this situation has greatly damaged his reputation in Hollywood. And for a long time, the press discussed which of the spouses was right and who was to blame. After all, after the actor was forbidden to approach Grigorieva and their daughter, the pianist made concessions. After the investigation, the actor was sentenced to 3 years probation, as well as compensation in the amount of $400,000. And after a while, Oksana again demanded a tidy sum of $500,000 for moral damage. The woman tried to present the actor to the public as a distraught psychopath who almost killed her.
I ran into my son's bedroom and told him to hide because Mel is crazy. You know, he's getting really violent. So my son was getting ready for bed, and he jumped around the bed and on the kind of behind the bed, and I was standing in the middle of the room with the baby, like like, a mother protecting her cubs, and I was standing in the middle of the room holding the baby as Mel proceeded into the room and struck me twice.
Whatever it was, this relationship cost the actor a lot. The court ordered material payments in the name of Lucia in the amount of $750,000 alimony, the amount of which was not disclosed, as well as the maintenance of a house in Sherman Oaks until Lucia comes of age. In return, the court ordered Grigoriev not to disclose his personal relationship with the actor. It's believed that despite all the expenses and hassle, Gibson emerged victorious from this story. Among the actor's confirmed subsequent novels is an office romance with a young screenwriter, Rosalind Ross, which happened in 2014. The woman was 34 years younger than her chosen one, which did not bother the actor at all. They posed together on the red carpet, giving a tidbit for gossip. In 2017, Ross gave birth to Mel's son. The boy was named Lars. At the moment, the couple lives together and rarely appears in public. Among the unconfirmed ones, there was an affair with actress Diana Aloise, who claimed a relationship back in the 80s during Gibson's relationship with Moore, as well as rumors about the actor's connections with the Russian singer Oksana Pochepa. But Mel Gibson's problems didn't end there. Years later, during a period of increasing cancellation culture, Winona Ryder in an interview stated that Gibson said anti-Semitic and homophobic comments about her, calling her an oven dodger, a reference to the Holocaust. According to the famous actress, Gibson called her a liar and strongly denied the persecution of the Jewish population. We were at a crowded party with one of my good friends, and Mel Gibson was smoking a cigar, and we're all talking, and he said to my friend who's gay, "Oh wait, am I gonna get AIDS?" And then something came up about Jews, and he said, "You're not an oven dodger, are you?" The actress's statement was followed by a surge of indignation on social media in which Gibson was actively discussed and condemned. Twitter was full of phrases like, "Mel Gibson is an anti-Semitic lowlife who doesn't ever deserve to hold another job in Hollywood." Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, tweeted, "Winona Ryder's account is another example of Mel Gibson's disgusting anti-Semitism and homophobia. But it's not just about hate. The same white male privilege and power that props up a bigot like Gibson also safeguards a system that holds back so many talented, diverse artists." The actor denied Ryder's claims, saying the actress was lying, but it didn't help him. Even after the drunk driving scandal, the WME agency in the person of Ari Emanuel broke off relations with the actor, and following Ryder's accusations, many in Hollywood did not want to have anything to do with the actor at all. One influential publicist told Variety that a producer called them and asked for advice on working with Gibson, especially in an era when companies avoid disputes and increasingly take real responsibility and care of their business partners. All this led to the fact that Gibson, in principle, stopped being invited to the roles. Contacting him has become a bad thing in Hollywood circles. Mel Gibson has become an outcast for many. Gibson's detractors, such as Seth Rogen, joined the general criticism. The screenwriter believes that the biggest risk of Mel's work in Hollywood is that he will continue to make films such as The Passion of the Christ. The people who put up money for a Mel Gibson movie don't want him to make a romantic comedy. They want him to make something that is provocative and in line with his views. A movie with an anti-Semitic bias is released internationally, not just in America, and that's sobering, said Frank Rich, a writer who fiercely criticized The Passion of the Christ for promoting anti-Semitism and has written numerous critical articles about Gibson over the years. There was another opinion in the public field. Mel Gibson has not had a career without controversy, and through it all, he's been incredibly resilient. Right, wrong, or indifferent, his fans have not left him, and I don't think they're going to leave him now. I think the people that are Mel Gibson fans tend to be the people who might actually rebel against political correctness. Despite all this, the actor and director still has many supporters in Hollywood. Among them are close friends Jodie Foster, Whoopi Goldberg, and Robert Downey Jr., who called on the industry to give Gibson a second chance when he accepted the American Cinematique Award in 2011. Gibson has established relationships with influential Hollywood players such as Emanuel and former Sony executive Amy Pascal. Hacksaw Ridge producer David Permit attributed Gibson's anti-Semitic remarks in Malibu to alcoholism and said he was not the man he was being made headlines for. A decade later, the actor tries to return. In 2016, Gibson commented on the 2006 incident, saying that he now leads a sober lifestyle and finds it annoying that he's reminded of his sins from a decade ago. "It was an unfortunate incident," Gibson said on playback when asked about the fact that there are many who feel they can no longer support him or his work. Quote, "I was loaded and angry and arrested. I was recorded illegally by an unscrupulous police officer who was never prosecuted for that crime, and then it was made public by him for profit and by members of, we'll call it the press. So, not fair. I guess as who I am, I'm not allowed to have a nervous breakdown ever." The actor acknowledged his words and accusations as terrible, and his interview was steeped in open regret about what happened.
And I'm ashamed of that. That came out of my mouth. And I'm not that. That's not who I am.
People close to Gibson believed that he paid the price and showed that he'd become a different person. And in the last 10 years, since he stopped drinking, no new scandals have arisen. Despite the scandals behind the scenes and in his personal life, colleagues at work speak of the actor as a talented pro, calling him respectful, pleasant, with a strong work ethic on set. Numerous people who have worked with the star told Variety that they have only positive experiences that they can share in their professional relationship with the director, from time spent on set to traveling during press tours. One of the producers, who gave Variety an anonymous comment, speaks highly of the actor, although he admits that the casting led to great disagreement. "We thought about if it's okay for us to work with him or if he's still taboo," the producer said. Quote, "We all agreed he's out of jail because he was doing big movies and getting awards buzz. We thought it's been a long enough time, and hopefully he's changed his behavior and made his amends." The comment says that there was no problems at all during the work, even remotely. Moreover, Gibson was actively involved in the work and as a co-author. Mel was the first to come to work and the last to leave. On the set, the actor was nice to everyone, and everyone loved him. I never saw any bad things about him, and he seems to have changed that part about him. I have no idea what type of guy he is to family or friends, but professionally, he's one of my favorite A-list stars I've ever worked with. The producer continued. The result was a very ambiguous situation. For some, Gibson has become the epitome of misogyny and racism. His statements in the public field framed him, and it's not just about public insults and inappropriate behavior, which many stars have done. Ambiguous statements towards Hollywood and the ability to go against the tide have attracted a significant number of detractors, and all this combined ruined the career of the once popular and respected actor. Or not. Write your opinion in the comments. Do you think that a celebrity was justly expelled from the starry Olympus? In the meantime, we continue. After the actor and director became persona non grata, he disappeared from the radar. For several years, nothing was heard about his work. Both fans and the media wondered if Gibson even had a chance to return to the ranks, and should he be forgiven.
This is not that moment. Shouldn't define the rest of my life. So.
No, I don't believe any...
The first attempt was a tragic comedy by Jodie Foster with an actor in the title role, the Beaver. The story is about the main character who is so deeply depressed that his consciousness begins to change and part of his personality is replaced by a toy on his hand, a beaver. This toy seems to come to life, more and more capturing the personality of Walter Black and subjugating him to itself. The alter ego that initially saves him from an emotional crisis eventually leads him and his family to a real tragedy. This theme was, accidentally or intentionally, very successful for The Return, a peculiar way for the actor to awaken sympathy and empathy in the audience. Few people wanted to work with Mel. Foster, the actor's longtime friend, decided to give him the opportunity to return to the big screens. He was her first choice for the role from the very beginning. He, on the one hand, is an extraordinary comedic presence, she explains, noting that his humor is balanced by the fact that he understands struggle from a very personal place. In a very thoughtful place. This was especially important given the story of the sequel, The Hangover Part 2. Then he got a cameo role as a tattoo artist, but director Todd Phillips eventually cut him from the project due to the fact that some colleagues protested Gibson's participation. "I'm not defending his behavior," Foster said in an interview with the Associated Press. "I'm defending the man that I know, and I know he's kind and loyal and is an incredible professional." Foster claims that he sees in a friend a person who knows what a struggle is and wants to change. "I've had to do a lot of awkward fighting to have a life that didn't feel like a reality show, as has he. He's a very private man who has a lot of children that he's raised who are great kids. He's made extraordinary films as a filmmaker. He has deep, long-lasting friendships. He's the most beloved person professionally you'll ever meet. It's him and Chow Yun-fat. Those are the two. He's just an incredibly good friend, loyal and interesting. That's the man that I know." The situation was greatly complicated by the fact that a recording of the dialogue between Gibson and Gregorivo, which we discussed above, was leaked to the network. At the time of these events, filming was almost finished. There was only one scene to reshoot, and the team got to work no matter what. He took it and takes it incredibly seriously. This is not some aside that's happened in his life. It's changed his life completely, and he knew that, but he went to work and sat in his chair with no makeup on and gave the two best takes. Both takes are in the movie. The most important scene in the film. It just brought me to tears. It's such an extraordinary performance. The director recalled that moment. But both Foster and Summit Entertainment, the company involved in the release of the picture, believed in its success. They're going to think his performance is extraordinary, said Rob Friedman, co-chairman and CEO of Summit Entertainment, which is releasing The Beaver. People have their own issues in their personal lives, and for the most part, they aren't in the public eye the way a movie star like Mel Gibson is. They resolve them without the scrutiny and intense focus. It's true, after the premiere of the film at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, it caused a strong reaction. Many critics have responded very positively about the picture. With the dusky corners, Gibson has revealed of his own psyche, wrote AP movie writer David Germain. The Beaver is not only a showcase for a great performance, but also an intriguing academic study of where Walter ends and Gibson begins. But nevertheless, it was unknown whether the film would be able to save the actor's career. After all, there were those who doubted his return. So, Howard Bragman, a celebrity publicist, stated in his interview, despite the fact that the film is good, it will not save Gibson. It's in the gutter right now. A lot of people don't want to work with him. He's in trouble. He's got a movie coming out that, under the best of circumstances, would be tough to sell. It's a very dark movie. A lot of people were afraid to make it. There were also those who considered the picture a trick designed to arouse sympathy. So, Hollywood columnist Tom O'Neill said that he did not see enough remorse in the movie. According to O'Neill, the actor's sins are so great that the star decided to partially admit them in his work, hiding behind a doll. The Beaver failed miserably at the box office.
Is this some kind of a joke?
No, hardly, love. Nothing funny about it.
Stop it with the puppet.
Gibson's colleagues, those who still supported him, advised the star to start with small roles in landmark projects and slowly return to work. But will the actor be able to return to the starting point? He's never going to get to where he was. Honestly, there are just some people who will never work with him. If Ari Emanuel, the head of one of the two most powerful talent agencies in the world, is saying he won't work with him, that sends a message. Participation in The Beaver failed to soften his image or restart his acting career, and Gibson returned to the action genre for his next 3 screen roles: Get the Gringo, 2012, Machete Kills, 2013, and The Expendables 3, 2014. The first 2 are hardly successful, but The Expendables gave him the opportunity to work with high-class colleagues again: Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, Antonio Banderas, Jet Li, and Dolph Lundgren, and others. Many had a rather biased attitude towards the action series, considering them almost the last refuge for aging former stars. The third part was the most disastrous of all. Despite the good box office receipts of $214 million, it received mostly negative reviews, and Gibson, as the antagonist, was nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award in the category of Worst Supporting Actor. The actor did not give up and even joked on television.
Do you think you'll have any regrets?
No. Not one.
Really? Not one?
No, not one. They tend to come in clusters.
And in 2016, he sat down in the director's chair again, making the whole world talk about his project. The biographical war drama Hacksaw Ridge was written based on the documentary The Conscientious Objector. But at first, no company wanted to take on this project. After Gibson's dismissal from WME in connection with the publication of Writer, the team had to independently find money for the budget. Mel was misjudged by so many people, said film producer David Perman. The man was in a life crisis back then. A painful divorce, alcoholism, Hollywood turning on him. The film is dedicated to the events of World War II and the fate of military medic Desmond Doss, who, being a Christian and a pacifist, refused to carry and even more so to use weapons in battle. At the same time, Doss became the first person who refused to conduct military service for reasons of conscience and received the Medal of Honor for his service. What attracted Gibson to this story? Well, for the director, it was an important work designed to show people the power of love in conditions of extreme cruelty. What he did was the greatest act of love there is, Gibson says. That's why I call this movie a love story, not a war story.
It's about time someone told a story about a real-life superhero, one that doesn't wear spandex, you know. It's a good thing to sort of...
You did that once before with Jesus.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
No spandex there.
No spandex on Jesus, though I bet he would look great.
The main role was played by Andrew Garfield. The actor is Jewish by nationality, which caused many questions in the press. Later, in an interview with People, the actor said that before agreeing to the shoot, he had a long personal conversation with the director. Garfield praised the actor's personal growth and advocated that Gibson continue to be able to shoot and act. He's done a lot of beautiful healing with himself, and thank God, because he's an amazing filmmaker and I think he deserves to make films. He deserves to tell stories because he has a very big, compassionate heart, said the actor in Gibson's defense. He's the kind of director that would come from behind the monitors just with his eyes wet. He knew when it was right and knew when it wasn't right, and I just really trusted him. And he's a visceral storyteller, so he can feel. He's like he can't help but feel everything. He's a really empathetic guy. Garfield also praised the director's approach to his work. He's passionate and loving and nurturing. A good director is like a good mother, and he's a really good mother. He's very gentle and compassionate. He trusts you as to where you need to go as an actor and how to get there, and he keeps it light when it needs to be. He has this nervous tick when things get too serious, and that's when he comes up with the gallows humor. The picture was a huge success. Released in November 2016, it grossed $180 million, and Gibson's direction and Garfield's performance drew separate praise. Hacksaw Ridge has received many awards and nominations. Among them were 6 Oscar nominations, including for Best Director. The film received Golden Globe Award nominations for Best Motion Picture Drama, Best Director, and Best Actor Drama, as well as 12 AACTA Award nominations, winning most of them, including Best Film and Best Director. But when Lionsgate saw the film's editing in April 2016, Promote recalls the studio stated, "You get a November release and an Oscar campaign. After a 10-minute standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival last summer, I knew Mel was back." Many perceived this success as a return of the star to its former form. A new company, CAA, has signed a contract with the actor and director, but there was no triumphant return. Over the following years, the actor was invited to local or low-budget projects. One by one, there were Daddy's Home 2, which garnered negative reviews from film critics, the low-budget Canadian action film Dragged Across Concrete, the passing drama The Professor and the Madman, starring Gibson and Sean Penn. The latter was Gibson's own project, although not in the role of director this time. He bought the film rights to the novel by Simon Winchester, The Surgeon of Crowthorne, back in 1999, but work on the story was postponed for 17 years for various reasons. Having already returned to work, the actor decided to try to realize his long-standing ambitions with the hope that he would succeed.
I know I've been less than present lately, but change will come, and for the better.
But that's not how it happened. A good cast, a pleasant work by director Farhad Safina, an unusual, interesting story about the real story of a self-taught genius and his work with a madman on painstaking and difficult work, the creation of a semantic dictionary. Beautiful, according to the reviews of the audience, the drama did not find much recognition and failed at the box office. And then it only got worse. The subsequent action films Boss Level, Force of Nature, and Detective Last Looks failed miserably. At the same time, the actor's performance was evaluated quite well, and looking at the projects themselves, you can't help but understand why they did not reach the heights. The actor went into low-grade action movies with a beautiful poster in the main role. Their only goal was to earn money and be able to stay afloat, and yet, in a series of recent years, we would like to highlight several works. In 2022, the actor took part in the biographical drama Father Stu, directed by Rosalind Ross. The plot reveals the path of the internal struggle of a former boxer and biker who takes the path of Christianity and takes the priesthood. The main role is played by Mark Wahlberg. The film was based on real events. The story of a priest, and for Mel's beloved, Ross, it became a directorial debut. It's not surprising that many studios refused to finance the project, and therefore Wahlberg himself took patronage to ensure that the film was seen by the world. You'll not see chases and shootouts here, a picture about religion and a person's knowledge of himself and his faith. Mark, being a faithful Catholic himself, brought Gibson into the project as the father of his hero. It's in a duet of these two that the entire picture is held. Interestingly, Mel's character also reveals his ambiguous sides and, according to the plot, abandons his family due to an addiction to alcohol. Is it a coincidence? In an interview with Insider, Mark said that it was Mel Gibson and his work in The Passion of the Christ who inspired him to create the film and finance it. I felt Mel had done it with The Passion, so maybe I try it. And if I did find someone to finance, then that's a whole other conversation, because typically the person cutting the check also has notes and wants to be involved in the process. So I felt, you know what? I think it's better if I just step up and have complete control. The actor commented on his decision. The film received many positive reviews. Variety film critic Owen Gleiberman called Father Stu an awkward true story in his review, adding, "It goes further into religious feeling than you expect, but you wish the drama were less sketchy." Father Stu is not your everyday Hollywood religious odyssey. It's closer to Diary of a Country cut-up. It's a surprisingly sincere movie about religious feeling, but it's also, too often, a dramatically undernourished one. And The Hollywood Reporter wrote that Gibson is showing one of the strongest performances of his career. And this is even taking into account the phrase of his character, which was looked at crookedly, taking into account the context of his story.
You ain't the Catholic here, Mom. You've had some nutty ideas before, but this is like Hitler asking to join the ADL.
Despite the use of swear words in the church, the picture received many positive reviews from Catholic leaders, including Bishop George Leo Thomas, who was a mentor to Father Stu himself. With a budget of $4 million, it paid off with a vengeance and earned $21 million. The second chance to prove himself was the release of the miniseries The Continental from the world of John Wick, which is a prequel to the famous John Wick franchise. Moreover, Gibson got one of the key roles, gangster and manager of the Continental Hotel, Cormac O'Connor. Yes, the very Continental Hotel, which is key in the struggle of Keanu Reeves' hero for his ideals and principles. The 3 episodes tell the story of how American businessman Winston Scott in the 1970s became the owner of one of the hotels of the Continental chain, a safe haven for murderers and cartel heads, and is more a bonus for fans of the original story.
This grand institution is part of a very old and sacred fabric. What a mess I would have made if I was to tear that fabric.
The series reveals new details and conventions of the original Wick universe, such as the rules of staying in Continental and the reasons why these rules take place, and also the relationship of the hotel with the outside world, which is of course a pleasant addition and reveals the topic more widely for devoted fans. But there was also a fly in the ointment, and that was aimed mainly at Mel Gibson. Praising the spinoff as a whole, 2 influential publications, The Guardian and The Hollywood Reporter, criticized the participation of the disgraced actor in the project. In that reality, the sight of Gibson hurling cruel insults or unleashing his violent temper is hardly the stuff of escapist action fantasy. His presence lends a sour note that many viewers will find outright intolerable, which defeats the purpose of casting such a recognizable face to begin with, wrote the latter. But Mel Gibson wouldn't be himself if he didn't challenge his detractors. Soon there was information that the actor and director were preparing to shoot the sequel to one of his most successful works, Lethal Weapon: Lethal Finale. It's considered the 5th and last part of the franchise. This will be the first part shot not by Richard Donner, but Gibson himself will sit in the director's chair. Initially, they planned to work together. In 2008, Donner stated he wanted to make a sequel, but the actor himself was not interested in it. But soon the situation changed and active preparation for work began. In 2018, the official title of the film was announced and everything stopped. By the time of 2020, the script had not yet been completed, and in 2021, Donner died without having filmed the sequel. But even after Gibson took over the reins, the film's implementation remained in doubt. Mel's 2024 interview raised even more doubts. The 5th one is written. It's interesting. It's been held up for one reason or another. There's always issues with these things. I think it's the best one of the whole series, but it just won't get made for some reason or another. I can't even explain why. It's rumored that this is due to the fact that Gibson decided to go all in and film the sequel to his other cult work, The Passion of the Christ, but everything is still at the level of rumors. In addition, Gibson announced his intention to shoot a picture based on the script of his beloved Rosalind Ross about the Battle of Okinawa during World War II. In any case, it doesn't look like the famous actor is ready to write himself off. In 2024, Asif Akbar's crime thriller Boneyard was released with Mel in the title role, an FBI agent who hunts a serial killer. In addition, he's producing the Barbary Coast TV show starring Kurt Russell and Kate Hudson, which tells about the life of shady San Francisco during the gold rush. And it's also planned to release a horror film for teenagers, Monster Summer, where the actor has one of the key roles. Gradually, the actor whitens his public image. Friends claim that the 61-year-old Gibson is now different. The biggest change, according to one of them, is that Mel stopped drinking, then he apologized till he was blue in the face. He gave millions to Jewish causes. Despite returning to his career, Gibson's status remained controversial. Popular publications such as Vanity Fair have speculated on whether to give the actor a second chance. Yes, Mel's talent is undeniable, and it was the quality of his work that allowed the actor to return to show business, but on the other hand, the reviewers conclude inappropriate behavior cost many stars their careers, so why should Gibson be an exception? Quote, I don't think it's going to affect his career at this point unless something new and devastating comes out. Public relations specialist Howard Bragman shared his observations. Quote, Mel Gibson has proven to be the exception to the rule. If there's a new incident, people in Hollywood who've stood by him are going to have to rethink their association. And yet, despite all the mistakes and failures, Mel Gibson remains one of the hottest guys in town. As one of the agents said, the industry has not forgiven him, but it understands that sometimes it has to separate the artist from the art. Whether Hollywood will be able to give the actor and director the opportunity to fly high again is unknown, but we do know that Mel Gibson is able to stand up in any situation, or almost any situation.
Well, I think in a general way, I just want to be very good at what I do and to get better at it. And hopefully that's what's happening. And specific plans, no. I've never done that.
And we will try to keep you informed of new events and news from the life of your favorite actor. Therefore, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, subscribe and click on the bell. It was the Biographer team with you. If you like our videos, be sure to write your wishes in the comments. See you next time. Bye-bye.